This is the award-winning Lee Pitts Live.
Brought to you by the North Law Firm. For car accidents and negligent security cases, call Joe at 239-337-1191. By Crime Stoppers of Southwest Florida. Report crimes and get paid with nobody knowing your identity. 1-800-780-TIPS. And by Lee Health.
Welcome back to Lee Pitts Live. Of course, I be him, Lee Pitts, and so thrilled to be here at Toles Park in Southwest Florida. It's located in the heart of Fort Myers in the Dunbar community, and it's a part of the conversation that we're having our Icons series. As we kick off our Icon series, we're going to start off with one Roy Kennix. If you lived in this area, it's a familiar face as a leader in our community. It's going to be a part of the Lee Pitts Live Icon series for 2020. Roy Kennix has been a pillar in our community, and he never stops working. He's the only person I've ever called my mentor, because I don't really do the whole mentor thing. I don't look for mentors. The way I was raised, I just have to go out and make it happen. And if anybody give me a hand, they give me a hand. My mom kind of taught that self-sufficiency thing, so I didn't really know what a mentor was, struggling to make ends meet, until I met Roy Kennix. The first time I saw an African-American male that I could see as my role model and somebody to advise me, I met him when I was around 29 years old, and we've been good friends ever since. I tried to elevate my statue with him and call him my uncle or something. But without further ado, let me introduce everybody to our first guest in our Icon series here in Southwest Florida. If you're looking at us from out of the country, out of the town, Southwest Florida is located in the southwest quadrant of the state of Florida in a city. We're in a city called Fort Myers, and we're in the community, the Dunbar community, which is the largest minority community in the area. Roy, welcome to Lee Pitts Live, man, and congratulations on being selected as one of our icons.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to be with you once again, and particularly given the nature of the occasion. When you use the word icon, that is something special. Mm-hmm. It bespeaks a certain level of achievement and professional recognition that is attributed to that individual. So once again, I thank you for actually having me be part of a series of individuals who made special contributions to this wonderful community.
Well, you were my first choice when I started to explore my 2020 icons. There'll be others who will be coming on board. And I chose this setting here to interview you because this setting in the heart of the African-American community, in an underserved community here in Florida, is the perfect setting for a person like yourself who has allocated the majority of your adult life, or all of your adult life, to helping improve the station of minorities and disenfranchised people in this country to achieve higher heights despite the privileged life that you grew up in. Tell me how you get to that point, how you got to that point of being so concerned about, I call it privilege, Roy, I know you don't like that. He's a member of Kappa Alpha Psi 2 Thief, and I'm Phi Beta Sigma. Roy, just tell me how you got to that, your ideology. How did it first get shaped like that?
Well, I think in terms of an ideology, when we speak of an ideology, everyone has an ideology. Sometimes they're not conscious of that. You're either exercising an ideology about which you're conscious, or you're exercising somebody else's ideology. But quite simply, ideology has to do with your orientation, your direction, the kind of values, political values you feel are important. I learned from an early stage, I suppose, from my parents, growing up in South Louisiana, that it was very important to be concerned about the improvement of people, individuals in the community, in our immediate community, and in the community around us. My parents never graduated from high school, but they had a great sense of consciousness and wanted to make sure that we, their children, had the best opportunities available, because they believed that even though we were growing up in a segregated environment, that there would be opportunities. And just not to prolong this phase of my life, I do want to say my father was constantly, and I observed him, reading magazines like Ebony and Our World, Jet Magazine, that touted the achievements of African Americans. We learned about guys like Ralph Bunche at an early stage, because my father was always showing us magazines about these gentlemen. So it helped to instill within us a sense of pride and a desire to want to achieve. I had the great opportunity, because of my father's perseverance, to attend a small school, elementary school, and my father wasn't a wealthy man by any means, but it was a private school, and he paid for our tuition. Mine,
Catholic
my
school,
brother,
if I recall.
Roman Catholic school.
I've heard all the great
St.
stories.
Catherine of Siena. Terrific school. We learned the 3 R's at a very early stage. And I'll just say this: if you didn't learn, they had something for you. And I think some of you probably know what I mean. But at any rate, I had the great opportunity at 15 to graduate from high school in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, and enter Southern University.
All right, before we go to Southern University, stay with me. I'll walk you through it. Let's go back to your formative years in high school, elementary school, where you talked about you went to the Catholic school,
right,
and you got a great foundation in education. And I want to take that opportunity to say that you understand the value of a great foundation in education. It could lead to so many other opportunities. And right now, you and Frankie, under you guys' leadership, basic learning skills is giving the less fortunate and anybody else the opportunity to get those fundamentals at an early stage with your tutorial program.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Lee, because you're absolutely right. Basic Learning Skills Learning Center, for which I serve as Director of Planning and Development, and one of its founders, along with my wife, has been providing tutorial services. We call it no frills tutorial services. And now what do I mean by that? I mean essentially that there are programs around, for example, that tend to stress mentoring, development of character, self-respect, self-esteem. While we think mentoring is important, we also know that a student at a certain age needs to learn how to read effectively, comprehend what he reads, to speak effectively, and to do basic math. And you got to learn these basic things: how to read, spell, and how to multiply and divide fractions, add. Do these things effectively at a certain stage. It can't happen when you're in 10th grade. It's almost too late then. So basic learning skills, my commitment to that entity is a reflection of values I learned at a very early stage growing up.
Again,
no doubt about that.
Again, here you just recently turned 80 years old. I went to your, it's part of the documentary, bro. Got a chance to go to your 80th birthday. I was so proud to be there, and certainly thrilled that you asked me to make some comments. But taking the values that were instilled in you at a young age, understanding the value of education. We're going to get to college and high school and all of that, and the fact that you pledged the wrong fraternity. We'll get to that. Your days in Jersey. You still implement that through basic learning skills. Right now, you're still making sure you and Frankie and your staff are making sure that people get that chance in life. Again, that ties right into your general way you conducted your adult life. It's making people have a fair shake.
Well, I think that's a good point. No question about that. One of the values that basic learning skills represent to me is one that has to do with access to equal opportunity. That is a political value. That's part of my ideology. I believe, and I've been driven by this particular notion all of my life. Now, with basic learning skills, when we started, I won't go on and on about basic learning skills. We started as a program which responded to the No Child Left Behind Act. This was the so-called free tutoring program in which schools across America offer tutoring through private, non-for-profit organizations, for the most part, that offer tutoring to children who were on free and reduced rate lunch for free. So all across America, many students got served, sometimes as we did here in Fort Myers, at the schools that the students attended. We recruited a core of subject area certified teachers to provide the same level of tutoring to those kids in reading and math from kindergarten through 12th grade that kids get at places like Sylvan and Kumon, but they got to pay $70 an hour. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, working class parents, be they black, white, or Hispanic, simply can't afford that level. They can't. Their budgets won't allow it. So we offered that tutoring. We recruited tutors who were teachers after school, and they tutored these children at the schools that the children attended for the most part. Then we branched off, as we are still doing today, providing tutoring in homes, in centers, and places like libraries.
You're basically meeting the students where they are.
Right, meeting the students where they are. The tragic difference now, though, is that with the school district, we were able to provide tutoring for so many more students because the school district, through federal monies allocated, were able to pay for the tutoring of those children. And we were able to hire subject area certified teachers and pay them a reasonable wage. Well, the federal government ended that program. The school district took that program inside. However, it has not been particularly easy for them to replicate the level of service we provide, which is 1-to-5 ratio, one tutor for 5 children. And it's been proven by experts that in relatively small classrooms, students can learn more effectively. So we're tutoring in homes. We have clients such as the Children Network. We tutor a lot of children for the Children Network. And I want to say to you that I am quite proud of the fact that many of our parents, I sat with one today, a woman who has a child who needs help. She says he's in danger of being held back. I've identified the school he's attending. But this woman is willing to pay a modest fee to pay for tutoring by that for that child by one of our subject area certified teachers.
And that's something. Man, continue to do the great work there at Basic Learning Skills. The fact that you mentioned early on that your father was a reader, read a lot of black periodicals and things that put different images in your face. How many siblings were in the household?
There were 6 of us.
And call their names, dead or alive, so that they can be a part of this Icon series. For those who have just joined us, we're talking to Roy Kennix, the leader, pioneer, and he's a part of the Lee Pitts Live 2020 Icon series.
Okay, Lee, I really appreciate this opportunity. I come from a family of 6. And we're all somewhat close together, like stair steps in terms of ages. My older brother, Claudel Kennix, he's in California at this time. He went to Southern University with me. We graduated together. And by the way, Lee, we're both Kappas.
And he's looking at this right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then there's my older sister, Frances. She still lives in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, capital city of Louisiana. For those who might not know, she's a retired teacher. And there is, following her, there's Lorraine Provost Kennix, who lives in Oakland, California. And she, for years, worked as a program consultant for educational testing services. And one of the programs that she's associated with is a college awareness program,
okay,
which for the past 20 years, she and her family have managed. And quite simply, what it does is to create tours for high school juniors and seniors to visit the black Presbyterian colleges. And that has been going on for 20 years. There are schools like Stillman College is one of those schools, and there are numerous others. And they visit these schools and get a taste of what it means to go to a college, what it means to go to a black college. And oftentimes these students get scholarships, so they're able to attend these schools.
Your family, as you started to describe your family, and you got about 3 more siblings to describe, it seems like your family is everybody has taken on a leadership role in society, and it's almost like the American dream, kind of well-educated black family.
Well, I can tell you that this wasn't something that happened by accident. And let me just quickly identify the other three.
There you go.
The next one in line would be Brenda Kennix. She too is a graduate of Southern University.
Oh, Southern
and,
produced.
Went to Atlanta, and for a while she worked at Spelman College.
By the way, if I had gone to Southern, I went to Talladega College, Roy. I've told you that story. I'm glad I didn't go to Southern. I would have never graduated. Just too many beautiful women. I'm sorry. Talladega, we had some beautiful women, but Southern had them like 1,000 times the number. Continue. I had to get that in for fun's sake. Okay, you talked about Brenda. Go ahead.
I gotta say, parenthetically, Lee, what you just said is true. Okay, now Brenda, following Brenda, there is Marvin Kennix.
Marvin.
Now, Marvin Kennix has a special distinction in as much as he is the only one of the six who does not include Southern University as his alma mater. Marvin is an alum of University of California at Berkeley. He graduated there many years ago with an engineering degree, and he's a very accomplished man. His son, Lance, is a lawyer by training, and he practices as a lawyer. And I think the thing that happened was that my parents instilled in us at an early stage the importance of being supportive of each other.
Okay.
Now, why is that important? I guess the reason why Claudel and I got out of high school, out of college together. So he went to California, where he worked, eventually went to graduate school, got a master's. I had a fellowship to the University of Pittsburgh Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. So I went there, and I eventually became that school's first African-American graduate.
Really?
To get a degree in a master's in public administration. But so the two of us, Claudel and I, weren't able to do, at least I wasn't that much for the other members of our family. But Claudel, because he joined the work arena immediately after graduation, he was able to assist Frances in her college costs. So he helped her to pay for her college costs, because after all, mother had another daughter in college. So by the time Frances graduated, I was working for the Boston Redevelopment Authority, and I helped Lorraine, my sister Lorraine, my younger brother Marvin, and to go to college. So
Man,
within the family, we really helped
One
each
more
other.
sibling?
Well, I think I mentioned Marvin.
Okay.
Marvin was number 6.
Okay, we got them all in, because when they see this, I don't want to make sure you didn't miss anybody.
And all but two, the youngest two, well, all but Brenda and Frances were here to help celebrate my 80th birthday.
80th birthday.
How wonderful that was.
Now, you celebrate your 80th birthday here in Fort Myers. I don't know if you did anything in Atlanta.
No, we didn't.
So we're honored that a person of your stature who has your roots in the north of Florida, Louisiana, Jersey, New York, Atlanta, you took the opportunity to celebrate your 80th birthday here. I want to put you on the spot a little bit. You don't have to get the number exactly right, but how many children do you have, and how many grandkids do you have?
Well, I have one son, Shango Kennix. And with respect to grandchildren, I have 3 grandchildren. I have 2 granddaughters, actually, and I have
Get on out, hang out.
a number of grandchildren, about 6 grandchildren.
Continue. People rolling up. This to be the man to talk to. All right, give us about 20 minutes. I got a guy right here. See, this is happening live, people. We got a son who needs some help in school. He's got the great tutorial program. We got the perfect basic learning skills.
Take down this number.
All right, we'll get to you in a second. Hang out. Go ahead. Roy, this is happening live. I can't stop tape from rolling.
All right.
Go ahead. This is how iconic Roy is.
Well,
All right. So total. Just try to give me a rough number, Roy, of grandkids.
okay, we have grandkids. I have Michelle Kennix.
Don't give me all the names, please.
This is where I can remember the
Go ahead,
numbers
Roy.
better.
Right.
Niall Kennix, and those are Shango's two daughters, and he also has a son, Ramar. That's 3. And the interesting part of our family is that I do
We're
have
on
3
air right now.
I do have 2 nephews who are sons of Marvin's son, Lance, and they are children who of Hispanic origin, because Marvin's son, Lance, who is a lawyer, married a Hispanic female at the University of California, who's also a lawyer.
Just write your number down and name. We'll get to you. Just put it right there on the ground, right there.
So one child's name
Bring it, hand it to me. Go ahead.
One child's name is Frida Kennix, and the other child's name is Ulysses Kennix, and they are basically Mexican Americans
Okay.
who are also Kennixes, and we're proud of that.
You made your way through it, Roy.
All right. Okay.
Roy, one of the places I know too that you're very fond of, and when I got a chance to go there, you told me everywhere I go when I travel the country, you tell me a name of a person to look up, and when I look up that person always shows me a great time. I want to get him on this. When I was in Chicago, he took me to see Nat King Cole's brother, Freddie Cole. Let's call his name. He gets down here from time to time.
Edgar Dudley.
Dudley. I'm getting you on this documentary, man.
Great friend of mine. A warrior, and always a people's champion.
And this is great. Roy, you've really gotten a chance to see the world. You've been to Africa.
Yes, I have.
You spent some time in Europe as well.
Right, but mostly overseas in Africa, especially Ghana.
Mm-hmm. What stood out to you in Ghana that you would never forget about as we move through this?
I guess the thing that stood out to me when I was in Ghana was there were a couple of things. One, I was very, very excited about the interest of the Ghanaian people and following the tradition of their great first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah,
Okay.
to be able to control the their own destinies. And they felt the way to do this was by gathering the resources to be able to develop the minerals in the country, especially gold. I don't know if many people don't realize that Ghana remains one of the world's greatest producers of gold.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the fisheries industry in Ghana, especially the tuna fishing industry. But what Nkrumah did that just seemed to permeate the character and values of the Ghanaian people was a certain kind of Afrocentric orientation. By that I mean, well, I'm using the wrong term. I mean sort of Pan-African orientation. And by that I mean that the Ghanaian people felt that African people in Africa, as well as African people throughout the African diaspora, and that includes us, African Americans, needed to be involved in the development, assisting with the economic development of Ghana. And that's how I first got to Ghana, not on a frivolous, and nothing frivolous about joy trips, but I went there with an African American who had been an associate of Kwame Nkrumah when Kwame was at Lincoln University. And that man was there to help the Ghanaian people make contacts with African Americans, especially, and others in this country who could help help the Ghanaian people with economic development without taking over that development. So he was looking for people who knew something about architecture, something about helping develop the timber, fisheries industry, and also the gold mining industry. I can talk on and on about this, but I won't. The last thing, may I make one more comment about Ghana? One trip we went to a mining village in Ghana. It's called Takwa.
Okay.
And that was under the leadership of the Director of Geological Services for the whole country. He collaborated with me and my party. I had a geologist from here that I took with me, as well as 2 other businessmen, to talk about how we might be able to help him develop and expand on that country's industry in mineral development.
All right. So early on in your life, not you were an adult, but economic development, all that it's been a part early on in the fabric of your life, which brings us to, we're going to skip around, but right here where we're sitting right now, these acres of land that we're sitting in, so apropos to you as economic development, improving your own lot in your own communities. Tell us where we're sitting and what's going to be here. Say about a year from now, we'll see construction going on here, and this will become what under your leadership?
Okay, let me see if I can put it in some context. I've been involved in some aspects of economic development, you're right, all my life. When I came to, I have to put in context, we'll talk about this particular site. We're sitting at the Toll's Garden site.
In Dunbar, on the corner of Highland and Edison Avenue and Veronica Shoemaker. Go ahead.
Well, may I say a few things about the Dunbar Shopping Center?
Okay, we're going to go to that. Go ahead. Go to Dunbar Shopping Center. Okay. But I don't want to get off this.
All right. There's a linkage between these 2 projects. My reputation as a guy with some capacity for economic development here in this area grew out of my successful leadership, along with Richard Sapp and others, in taking a 5-acre piece of land, and to help you know where the land is, those of you who may not know, is presently occupied by an organization called the Dream Center. Mm-hmm. Well, when I came here, that was vacant land.
On ML King Boulevard.
That was vacant land.
Right next to the Pepsi plant there.
Right. And you know, Lee, when we came here, that was vacant land. However, there was a dream on the part of 2 African-American councilwomen, Veronica Shoemaker and Ann Knight, to have a retail center in the Dunbar area.
Okay.
So I was working for we had developed a community development corporation.
LECO.
Right, doing business development, and you were our vice president.
I was the senior vice president.
Let me correct that. You told me there are vice presidents, but there's also a special vice president.
Yeah,
and that person has the title of senior. and Lee did a lot for us, helped us to understand banking very, very well. So that was a big plus that he added with his own technical expertise coming out of banking as a professional.
In fact, if you hadn't had an economic development mindset, Roy, you and I probably would never have met.
That's very
because
true.
I met you under the guise of you trying to get small business loans in the community.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the shopping center.
Well, the shopping center came about because, as I said, it was the premier project interest of these 2 councilwomen. But people were making fits and starts, but nothing really ever happened from that situation. So as one of the projects of the LECO organization was the development, taking that idea, assisting those councilwomen to bring that idea into fruition. So we started the process, took that piece of land, and we got tax credits for PepsiCo, who owned the land, and in place of that, they donated the land to the shopping center.
An amazing accomplishment.
So that was, from there, with site control, and anybody who's done development know the magic of site control. If you've got site control, you're able to do what is called leverage. You can leverage real money and capital. You can go to the capital markets, the banks, and get what you need to build, and also the grant-making agencies. So we just methodically went through the process of going to federal agencies that I had learned about through my travels around the country in my capacity as executive development person for LECO, and in my role as vice president for the National Congress for Community Economic Development.
And you were outstanding in that role, and I got a chance to see you from right there on the ground, to see you do what you did during that period, and it was just so influential on me and for me to see a black man doing what you were doing, and also along the way you were helping us, mentoring us, teaching us the road maps, and you didn't realize you were doing it. You were just doing stuff, Roy, until I started telling you. I was just watching you and picking up everything I could, man.
It was fun. Okay, so,
go ahead, continue on the shopping center.
Well,
I want my battery to run out on
just to make a long story short, I mobilized funding from about $6 million from federal agencies like the Economic Development Agency, the Office of Community Services, and in order to, and also from Lee's Bank, gave us some direction there, the old First Union Bank.
Mm-hmm.
They put up the debt capital, and the banks, the agencies provided the equity, the grants. We didn't have to repay that because we had to repay First Union. Okay.
I wrote the business plan.
So there was about,
by the time Roy recruited me from the bank to work for him, and then I wrote the business plan to take back to the bank. So they were getting a document, a proposal that was coming from one of their former employees. It's a nice move, Roy. Nice move.
Thank you. We had fun.
That carried me a long ways too. Okay, so then after the shopping center, now you're into real estate development right now for residential living.
Well, actually, it had. I developed a reputation as a guy from this community in particular.
Black community?
Yeah, not just here, but somewhat nationally, who could put together the requirements, the capital and technical expertise needed to develop a substantially significant project development. And that was pretty well known, not just here, but elsewhere. So there came a time when Councilman Streets, to his credit, is a guy who looks out for the community, placed on the city council agenda an item in which he said that, hey, it's about time we did something about that big piece of land at Highland, Edison, and Veronica Shoemaker, other than let it continue as a nice space with some lovely oak trees. Can we do something about that? So I just simply saw Councilman Streets,
Johnny Street,
I guess, articulation of what I saw as an opportunity for economic development in an area that hadn't done much in recent years since the Dunbar Shopping Center.
That's where we're sitting right now, people, this area.
Right, in terms of economic development. And the unique thing about this was that the Department of the City, Community Development, I guess at that time through leadership and the impetus from Mrs. Sharon Rozier, had put together an RFP that focused on the need for affordable housing that would be 100% ownership, home ownership. But it went one step further, lest anybody think that it was just going to be, or it was going to be exclusively an area for low and lower income people. I don't think there's a thing wrong with that, because there's a big need for low and lower income people in terms of housing. But what she envisaged was that this development be carried out as a mixed income development, which would have both affordable housing as well as housing. Well, let's say by affordable housing, we were talking about housing that people made no more than 80% of the median income.
I see. Could
afford. And that's around $40,000 to $50,000. They could pay for that kind of housing. So what the respondents would have to do, well, I'm getting ahead of myself right now. Anyway, some of the things I just mentioned had to do with the specifications that were included in the original statement that was presented by the council through Councilman Johnny Streets. So an RFQ was, I spoke that night at the council meeting and asked the council, hey, let's do something different this time. Let's not just make this a project that, let's circulate the RFQ so that we would also possibly attract minority developers, just like 30 years ago, we attracted Herman Russell from Atlanta to come here and participate in the development of the Red Sox Stadium with Syntax Rooney. So that stadium was developed by a consortium of Syntax Rooney Russell. The Russell was the late H.J. Russell.
That's news to me.
In that development. And I facilitated Herman Russell's involvement with this. So the council agreed.
You also facilitated bringing Ambassador Andrew Young here as well.
Right.
Just want people to know that.
So anyway, make a long story short, the RFQ went out, and
request for proposal, people.
We felt that we looked around, actually went back to the Russells to see if they were interested. Said, yeah, Roy, we're interested, but we got so much to do. We just got through building the stadium for the Atlanta Falcons. Our hands are full. By now, I'm talking to Herman's children, because Herman has passed. But his children took over the company after his passing.
Herman Russell, famed developer, African-American in Atlanta.
Okay, so to come to where we are now with some brevity, I, after Herman Russell was really not available, I went to Robert McFarland, who was locally basically a developer of luxury housing, like Rivage, Saint-Tropez, Campo Felice, downtown where the old Sheraton used to be.
Okay.
And also he has a new development called Prima Lucy, which will be, again, luxury high-rise. But I knew that Bob McFarland also, within his body of work, had done affordable housing. So when I went to McFarland and said, hey, why don't you jump on board with us and let's respond to this RFQ. You doing the traditional kinds of things that you do as developer, and then I would collaborate with Frankie Jennings of FJ Services and Associates and former city councilwoman to take responsibility for the marketing and the sales. And within that context he said, fine, let's do it. Should I go on?
Okay. That got us to where we are today. What is going to be right here in this lot? How many units estimated to be here? I think you said 80. Was it 80?
140.
140 units. How many acres of land do we have here?
7.5.
7.5 acres of land. When should we see some dirt turning over here and construction start?
Okay, let me say this. One of the things I want to do also is give you a sense of the mix of people who are involved with this. I said that eventually the contract, and let me underscore this to all who are listening, the contract for this development was awarded by the city of Fort Myers to 46 Pittman LLC, a company controlled by Robert McFarland, and FJ Services and Sales, a company controlled by Frankie Jennings and Roy Kennix. These are the awardees, the winners of a competitive contract. So when we did the RFQ, responded to it, Lee, I think one of the things that made our application so competitive was the fact that we addressed the question, the central question that plagues affordable housing. How do you make housing affordable to people with low and moderate incomes, so they're not spending too much of their income for housing? Because historically, the notion is that if you're that you shouldn't spend any more than 30% of your income for housing. Otherwise, you're cutting into your grocery money, your health care money, the children's money for going to school, etc.
Transportation and so
forth. Okay, so what we did, we said, okay, there's got to be subsidies in here. So we went to a premier person in this area, African-American woman, who has a great reputation for subsidies, working with people to take advantage of all the subsidy programs around so they could get what they need to be able to provide for the down payment assistance they need to bring that house that might ordinarily sell for $160,000, maybe to bring it down to about $140,000, $120,000. and thereby be able to afford it, so they don't spend more than 30%
I'm
of their
still
income.
fascinated the fact that you remember all these figures, man. Go ahead, man. You just
I
found
went
them
to
out.
Southern University.
It was supposed to be. We get into all the technical stuff, Roy, and it's supposed to be a profile on you. Now we get into your project, but let's
Okay.
go that. Sum that one up.
Carolyn Norris, just to sum it up, is our person who's going to be responsible for helping you get subsidies if you're somebody who qualifies.
All right, Callan, you're getting a shout out here.
And then there's Prince Norris, who's African American, male. He's going to be the managing broker. He's going to be in charge of sales. Yvonne Hill, in charge of marketing. So those are some of the key players.
Louis Spade will be involved.
Louis Spade, the realtor who cares.
Real Louis Spade. I'm making sure you get in here. The
Give him a
realtor
shout
who
out.
cares.
He's going to be involved with one of the major salespersons, Tony Williams also.
So we have something that's going to be very good for our community coming in 2020.
And
To sum it up, right here in this lot.
okay, all right. To sum it up, also, you want to be sure that it's more than just nice houses we build for people. You want jobs. We want jobs for the community, and that's not going to happen by happenstance. This is part of my question you asked me from the outset. What is my ideology? My ideology said that the people who working class people need to have a shot at being able to earn more money, so they can feed their families and not be dependent on others to do that for them. So we're saying anything that goes up in this community needs to have a full share of African American, Hispanic workers and women. So we have Lee Ford. Say Lee Pitts again. Lee Ford.
That's
Lee Pitts
okay.
is going to help us with the PR part.
Lee
of this.
Ford is the good-looking one, and me and him joke all the time.
He's going to be involved
Shout
with
you
us.
out, Lee Ford.
He's going to be involved with us in actually making sure that we have a substantial portion of minorities, African American, Hispanics, and women who are going to be involved in getting the jobs and the work that will go to build this project.
That is very important to you,
Yes, it is. It
and I'm
is.
glad you
It is.
keep your eye on what's really important. Roy, let's go back for a minute and get
Okay.
back to our iconic series. We're in our iconic series, and all that we're talking about says something about the man,
Right.
Roy Kennix, here in the Lee Pitts Live iconic series profile. Roy, once you left the Catholic school, elementary school in Louisiana, you went to high school. Before you got to Southern, where did you go to high school?
I went to spend 2 years at a public school, Laurie High.
Okay.
Okay.
How was the education there? How did you fare in? Were you in any leadership positions and things of note in high school? I can't imagine you just went to high school.
Well, I spent 2 years there at Laurie, and I was a real young guy those 2 years. I was 14 and 15. I got out of there at 15. I went to Southern.
Okay.
And
You went to Southern at 15.
Southern at 15.
At 15 years old, you went to
15
college.
years old. I graduated at 19.
Listen to this,
Yeah.
people.
I went to the
This
University
dude,
of Pittsburgh.
that's
at
how
19.
brilliant this Roy Kennix is. I know a lot of you didn't know that. Went to college at age 19.
15. I graduated at 19.
You graduated from college at 19?
Exactly. Hmm.
Wow. A lot of us are just going to college. So were you some type of a role, some kind of a, you were exceptional in terms of, you say you spent 2 years in high school. Did you you finished all your
Yeah.
high school requirements in 2 years?
Yeah.
Did you set
No.
out?
I spent 4 years of high school. 2 at the Roman Catholic school. We went to the Roman Catholic school from 1st grade to 10th grade. Now, why didn't we continue the following 2 years? Okay.
Go ahead.
The reason for that was simple. It had a lot to do with the times. My father and his father were very, very committed to us going to college. My grandfather passed when we were in 10th grade.
Okay.
And some of the locals came to my dad and said, oh, they called him Buster. How are you going to send those 2 boys? Where are you going to get the money to send them to college? Maybe you ought to send them someplace where they can learn a trade. So just in case you can't afford to send them to college, they'll still have a trade. They won't have to,
Just
work out
dangle
the sun.
along.
Yeah. So my daddy bought that. It was a terrible story in some ways. So he took us out of the Roman Catholic school, and he came to us and said, "You guys are going to go to Laura next year." And I can't remember. I cried like hell because we didn't want to leave St. Catherine and go to Laura. But
What's
we did.
Lori?
It was a
That's
public
the
school.
public school.
Yeah,
That's where you can learn a trade.
yeah.
Okay.
And I'll just say this because it's a commentary on the level of education that was available to African Americans for the most part who lived in smaller towns. The entire morning at Lori, we spent our time in a carpentry shop where I wasn't interested, so I learned very little, really. My older brother Claudel did. He was interested, and today he's a pretty good craftsman as well. Okay, although he has a master's degree.
Very interesting.
But so from there we went to Southern. In the afternoon though, there was a teachers who taught me civics, U.S. government actually, history, English, and English. And I love those courses. So I couldn't wait to get out of that shop and go to those afternoon classes. So I guess that's why I went to Southern and majored in political science.
Now, when you got to Southern, this big HBCU, historical black college in Louisiana, the pride of the South, one of the prize jewel colleges of the South. What was your, of course, Talladega College being the top of the rung, the oldest black college in the South, founded in 1863.
It's a private school too.
It was right around the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that.
Yeah,
it was
that's
built by slaves.
That's something. That is something.
So when I walk on that campus, I'm walking on grounds of the slaves for the Emancipation Proclamation.
That's special. That's got to be special.
yeah.
And it was a private school too,
yeah,
wasn't
that's
it?
where everybody went. Yeah, who was in the South right after the freeing of the slave. That was
Right.
where black people could go to get an education. That's my little plug for Talladega College. But now we go to the big Southern University. Oh my goodness, that campus.
Oh.
How did you partake in the experience there? Student body, president, any of
man.
that stuff?
Yeah. I was student body president.
Really?
In my senior year, I was elected during my junior year. I was student body president.
Now, by the time you got to Southern and got engulfed in that whole experience, is that where you became really conscious about what was going on around you? Because I know along the way you got a chance to meet Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, a lot of the historic names that we hear about now, Andrew Young and all of them. You actually moved around and actually in their presence as an activist.
But right, you're right. That happened later when I was really in Jersey City working. I got involved with Dr. King. We brought him to Jersey City and helped him work with him in leading some demonstrations there. Did the same thing with Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown during that era. But when I got out of Southern, things were as the lyrics from a song says, the times they were changing. Nina Simone song.
What year are we talking about here?
So I'm talking about, I graduated from Southern at 59.
Okay.
Okay, the civil rights struggle was in its pre-development era. To give you an indication of what I mean,
59.
when I left Southern and went to Pitt, the guy who succeeded me, and we were learning politics then, how to make things happen, how to influence people and do things. So when I graduated from Southern, I wanted to make sure my my legacy continued.
The dynamic. Now you're going into the dynamic 60s.
Yeah. So my older brother and I, who's a member of my student body government, we made sure that Marvin Robinson succeeded me. And then Marvin became the leader of the sit-ins in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Oh, in Baton Rouge.
Was later arrested, expelled from school, from Southern, and later went on to a fine career in law and the judiciary. Was elected a judge in St. Louis many years ago.
Louisiana, very pivotal. New Louisiana, the state of New Louisiana had a lot of movements going on during that turbulent time of the 60s in terms of the civil rights movement.
Well, yeah, but one of the things I want to say is that there was also, I would say, a kind of a parallel movement going going on in the North in some ways. For example, housing was a big problem. Problem for overpriced housing, the need for development in various lower income neighborhoods.
Okay.
Places like Jersey City, uptown Manhattan that people call Harlem. So there was plenty of work to be done in those areas. So while our brothers and sisters were doing things in the South to achieve basic rights, like access to public accommodations, we had that in the North. But at the same time, there was a struggle for jobs, employment, equal opportunity, equal access to housing, and then there was substantial exploitation of African American communities by police, landlords, and the economic issues that are more and more coming to the fore nationally were hot there in the South. Stokely Carmichael eventually came to Jersey City. We marched together and wrapped around all these people. So I think lastly we note that as Dr. King left us, he began to more and more focus on the economic disparities that existed in the society. I think that's where he was going upon his passing.
Now, you know, you got my attention back in the mid-'90s when you told me that you had met Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm. I did.
And how you would drive from Jersey to New York, I think it was, or
right.
Philly or whatever.
Philly to New York.
Tell that story, how you got to meet one Malcolm X in person.
Well, I
Brother
really,
Malcolm.
I met him in person when he was...
He signed this little book for you because you gave me a copy of his signature.
Right.
I still got that, by the way.
I went to a lot of rallies with him where I learned a lot from him. Uptown Manhattan, for a while I ran the Model Cities program there. And he was pastor of a mosque at 119th and Lenox Avenue, right across the street from where my office was. So I got drawn into that.
Wow.
In part. And then in Boston, where I lived, right around the corner from where I lived, was the heart of the African American commercial community. A street called Blue Hill Avenue. The city's Muslim community owned a lot of businesses on that street, and they employed a lot of people in the African community, low and moderate income African American people. And these were black businesses who were starting businesses, cleaners, restaurants, other kinds of small businesses that we don't see so prevalent in our communities as we once did.
And at the time when you were seeing this type of, we hear about this all the time, all these thriving black communities prior to integration. At the time when you were moving around and seeing all of these thriving and bustering communities, you just assumed they would be around forever, huh, at the time?
Well, I guess what we hoped was that there would be more resources channeled into those communities and that they would expand and they would prosper. We didn't expect to see so many of them eliminated, as has been the case. That we didn't expect to see.
What was your parents' thoughts, Roy, as you started to become more politically active, more socially conscious? You know, like I said, you know, you'd be around Dr. King one day, you're around Malcolm the next day, Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown. You're in all types of facets. You weren't just one-dimensional in your thinking. What we hear now, you know, nonviolent, direct action approach and all of that. You had a wide. You told me this. You had a wide variety of ways of thinking about, and a lot of other people did at the time as well.
Right.
What was your parents telling you to just sit down and don't be all out there, you know, like my mom is always telling me?
Well, I did. Sometimes I got a little of that from my mother, more so than my father. My father himself he worked in New Orleans on the riverfront. He worked as a stevedore, an operator, forklift operator.
Okay.
And he was a very militant guy.
Okay.
And he believed in actually being assertive, and as we said in the streets, not letting anybody mess with him. Okay. But he was whatever I was doing, Daddy was generally very proud of my work. I kind of model my own direction from him, in a sense that his was always a commitment to being supportive, helping working class people, helping African American people, and really supporting progressive leadership
What a story.
in our communities. I remember him telling me the story of how, as a young man, he voted for Henry Wallace. Henry Wallace was a progressive candidate, as you may know, who ran to the left of Franklin Roosevelt and was viewed as a very progressive politician. So Daddy supported Henry Wallace back in those days. So he was that kind of person.
You got a chance during that time. We are aware of a lot of these iconic moments that took place during the early 60s and 70s. One of the most iconic is the March on Washington, 1965.
63, it was okay.
That was 65, wasn't it?
No, 63, it's okay. But I guess I got to kind of correct you because I was there.
Nah, I think we can look that
I might
up.
be wrong.
The reason I know it was 65 because the Emancipation Proclamation signed in 1965 that freed the slaves. After the Civil War, it started in 1862. Okay, so in 65, the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Dr. King gave his speech 100 years later, which would put us at 1965. That's how I know my dates. So we can, it's on tape. You guys can Google it.
Check it out.
Okay, so anyway, 65, the March on Washington. About 3 years later, if my recollection serves me right, Malcolm was killed.
Did you want me to comment on the march?
Yeah, let's go to the March
Okay,
on
now the march
Washington.
was a very, very, very special event. If for no other reason than the fact that I saw more people assembled in one place at one time than I had ever seen
You were there.
before. I was there.
We're talking to a guy
Yeah,
who was at the
yeah.
March on Washington.
And
Were you actively bringing involved in getting people there? Student Nonviolent Coalition Corps and all that stuff.
I was part of the delegation from Boston. 'Cause I was
Okay.
living in Boston at the time, and we drove to Boston from Washington. We mobilized people, all kinds of people from Boston, leadership
Could
people,
have been
middle
63
class
people. I'm just thinking it was 65, but go ahead.
working class people. A lot of people we pulled
Insufficient
together.
funds, check cash, Emancipation Proclamation, 1865. Go ahead.
Okay, so that was I Have a Dream speech, remember?
Right.
He made. Okay, the thing that was dramatic about this, there was a lot going on leading up to the march. Believe it or not, a lot of the traditional black leadership in Boston, for example, this was part of the subtext of the movement. They were afraid of John Lewis. That
Congressman
boy,
John
that boy
Lewis.
from Atlanta, Slick. We got to be concerned.
Member
about
of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity.
So they were concerned about John because
Blue Phi.
they saw John as being to the left and being a little too abrasive and might create problems. So if you recall, just fast forward, the mic was turned off while John Lewis was up there speaking. The microphone was actually turned off.
I don't recall
Yeah, that happened. That happened.
I heard James Baldwin was supposed to speak, and they thought he was going to be off script. And they gave his speech to Burt Lancaster, the actor.
Well, Burt Lancaster
As
did
Malcolm would say.
speak, and John Lewis did speak, but part of his speech was not coherent because the mic was turned off. You couldn't hear it.
I see.
Okay, but he spoke. He was only 26 at that time. So he was the youngest speaker on the platform and probably the only remaining living person who was there that day on the platform.
Wow.
John Lewis, still
Spoke.
very much alive, representing Atlanta in the U.S. Congress.
Amazing.
But the dynamics were just, it was an exciting time because between Boston and D.C., that distance isn't that far, right? And people weren't riding airplanes as much then as they were now. There was like an armada of cars, I remember, traveling between Boston and D.C. Cars.
Caravan. Car.
That's the right word,
Like
caravan.
going to the Super Bowl. Or
That's
something.
right, sort of like that. So it was a festive atmosphere. And that day at the mall, there were just a lot of celebrities in the crowds passing by. I do remember seeing Burt Lancaster, Sidney Poitier, what's the name, the writer, James Baldwin. James Baldwin was there also.
Sammy Davis, I think, was there.
Sammy Davis Jr.
Seen
was
him in
there. They were all
pictures.
sort of walking
Harry
together.
Belafonte.
Harry Belafonte was there.
Yeah.
And they were coming through the crowds, and,
Wow.
and people were just having a great time. But I can tell you one thing I remember very vividly. When Dr. King stood up to speak, when he uttered those first words, "I have a dream," the crowd became silent. And then as he got more into saying, "I have a dream," and what the dream was about, they were saying, "Martin, tell us about your dream.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your dream." And he went on and on from there. It was a very special moment. Very, very special
So the
moment.
March on Washington takes place, and here we are now, almost 50 years later. What would Dr. King think about the progress that has been made in America for black people, disadvantaged people, and so on? If he is able to say something about now.
I think two things inform us, because we'll never know what he might have said. But I think two things about his where he was upon his passing that really inform us. One was the speech he made in New York at the cathedral,
Okay.
and this was at the height of the Vietnam War.
Okay.
Okay, he said he described the United States behavior as being reprehensible. The United States behavior in Vietnam, remember?
Right.
And he went on to say the United States was the worst purveyor of violence in the world at that time. And by making those comments, a lot of the traditional support from the African American community and elsewhere began to become divided. Many of the traditional African American leadership wanted to separate themselves from Dr. King.
Why was that?
Well, they thought he was overstepping his boundaries, so to speak.
As a good country preacher, civil rights, and
I guess that's
let us sit on the toilet next to white people and let us drink from the from the water fountains and go in the front door of restaurants and hotels and little basic accommodations.
That may be some of it.
Okay.
But I think what he said, though, is informed. It tells us that certainly the United States involvement in what is now being seen as endless wars that people like Bernie Sanders talked about, Elizabeth Warren talks about at the national level, the continuous and protracted involvement of the United States in these wars elsewhere, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and threatening to wage war in still other areas.
Kuwait.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He would see that as being something that he would object to, in much the same way he objected to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he would be concerned about that for two reasons: violation of international law. The second reason is the fact that a lot of our resources that ought to be going for housing, education, health care are being squandered. $2 trillion in Iraq, $1 trillion in Afghanistan. Just think of what these resources could do were they to be transferred from endless wars to affordable housing, right? To free public education, to health care. All these progressive things that would make the lives of people better, and that would reduce crime too, by the way.
So it doesn't go unnoticed that your political persuasion right now is more so towards a quasi-socialist society here in America,
I don't
which
want to label it.
is very similar to what Bernie Sanders, candidate for president, and Elizabeth Warren espouses.
Right, I would say so.
Okay.
I I want to be associated with many of their views with respect to the kind of changes that need to be made in our foreign policy as well as our domestic policy.
Lee Pitts Live is a Lee Pitts Enterprise production.
Hello, everybody. This is Lee Pitts, the host of the award-winning Lee Pitts Live here on Fox 4. We appreciate you watching our show here on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, clicking below. Let everybody else know that they can subscribe as well. Also, when we're on the air on Fox 4, you can also catch us streaming live at 8:30 a.m. in the morning on fox4now.com. Just click on live and you get us all types of ways at your convenience. That's Lee Pitts Live.